Hi, everybody. Welcome to Great Books, Big Ideas. My name's Jim. Thanks for joining me. Time for another reading update, Monday, December 16th, 2024. Has anyone seen any drones out there? If you're in New Jersey or other parts of the East Coast, let me know what you're seeing out there. Every night I kind of look out and look up, and I don't know what I'm finding out there. But anyway, I wanted to first of all talk about a book that I have finished in the last few days, and that is Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. Really incredible novel. So I have a few notes on this book to share with you. It was a great book. I really liked the way it was paced, especially in the first half of the novel, and then the pace did shift about halfway through, and you also saw some point of view shifts, although the main protagonist of the book is a character by the name of Milkman, but there are several important characters here: Macon and Pilot and Hagar and Guitar. They all have these nicknames, and but there were point of view shifts, and the pace really started moving. And in part two of the book is really where you get propelled into a high momentum plot. And I can't really divulge a lot of information here about it because it would just be too many spoilers for you if you're planning on reading the book. But I did definitely get this sense of being pulled through the novel as if like there was this rope around my waist, or I'm at the end of a fishing line, and I'm just being kind of pulled inexorably to the finish of the novel, and I wasn't sure where it was going. I will say this, that it turns into a kind of a quest narrative where a milkman travels from his Midwestern town or city in Michigan in the Great Lakes area, and he goes to Danville, Pennsylvania in search of something, and then he is led down into Virginia in search of something, and he's on a quest for gold, number one. I don't think that's giving too much away, but then he's also really on a quest to find his identity and where his family comes from. And he has so many unanswered questions about people from his past and in his present. But I love that feeling of being kind of pulled in and without really being able to predict what was going to happen. And this continues all the way up until the final page of the novel. Like, this is not a novel that peters out. It really finishes on a high point or low point, depending on how you interpret it. But it definitely keeps you reading up to the last page. Major revelations and discoveries and plot points. So many fine passages of not only really well-rendered dialogue, but also just lyrical writing. Setting a scene, pacing a scene, talking about setting, just evoking this kind of sad and tragic tapestry of the family life, and sort of all the kind of echo effects that go around them, like ripples in the water, if you will. It at times almost reads like magic realism, but I wouldn't stretch that interpretation too far, but it sometimes, in some moments, does feel that way. You get a strong sense of family history and legacy here, for sure. And I'd say it's akin to what you get in William Faulkner, although these are two very different writers. But it was kind of on that high level that you find with a Faulkner. That it wasn't a Faulkner who said something to the effect of "the past isn't even past." Like, and that line kept on ringing in my ears as I was reading Song of Solomon. Milkman's story does turn into this quest narrative, like I said, as he's kind of traveling through Pennsylvania and then Virginia. And it gets more mythological too as we get towards the end of the book. He discovers this kind of myth that has marked his ancestors, and I can't go into much more detail than that, but it's very finely stitched together, and it kind of bridges between the beginning of the novel and the end of the novel in a surprising way for me, but a very satisfying way. So there are so many themes to chew on with this book. I mean, you've got what I think it's a very finely rendered family saga of, like, I would call them middle-class black family, well-to-do. I mean, this family in Michigan, like, they are pretty well off, unlike so many other African Americans, and you get kind of like their experience and how they see things, but they're still kind of marked by the legacy of slavery and racism and all the rest of it. You have this kind of North versus South dynamic. I'm thinking of the Great Migration here, where people are coming up from the South into the northern states and cities, industrial areas. And I feel like the novel's in partly about that experience, because we end in the South. We start in the North in Michigan, and we end the novel in Virginia. That definitely living in the shadow of slavery is a theme that's big in the novel. You have a masculine-feminine dynamic, sort of exploring what does it mean to be a man, what does it mean to be a woman. You have loyalty as a theme between friends and family. You have friendship and betrayal. You have, like, the friendship between Milkman and Guitar becomes very contentious, and they go on different paths. And also there's the quote love story between Milkman and Hagar. I mean, he basically, well, I don't want to give too much away, but that is a very fraught relationship. But I think when you boil it down, Song of Solomon is really a family saga type of story. Just terrific book. 1977, Song of Solomon. I would rank this. I've only read, I think, 3 Toni Morrison novels. This one, the first one I read was Sula, and then Beloved. This one ranks right up there with those other ones, and it might even be my favorite, but it's been a while since I've read the other ones. Anyway, definitely a reputation maker for Toni Morrison. Now, I want to talk also about all these other things I've been reading. I have been really ping-ponging all over the place. On the Kobo Reader, I'm sort of going between like 4 different books at the same time. So I've got Praeterita, which is a memoir by John Ruskin. Finnegan's Wake, still slogging through it. I'm maybe about 58% of the way through that novel. What else am I reading? Oh, The Adventures of Augie March by Saul Bellow, which is starting to take hold with me. I'm maybe about 12% through it, and it's now starting to stick a little bit, but I don't really know where the book's headed other than just kind of telling the tale of this family and neighborhood and, the city life in Chicago that Augie March is going through as a young kid, as he's growing up. We'll see where it goes. And then the 4th book is, this philosophy book, Negative Dialectics by Theodor Adorno, which I don't want to say much about, but it has like these little short chapters. And, I'm a masochist when it comes to philosophy, but, can't help myself. But maybe I'm learning something from it. I don't know. So those 4, those are kind of nighttime reading. I did read a bunch of more pages here in A Skeleton Key to Finnegan's Wake. Still not making a whole lot of sense, but it's kind of fun to read it. And it does, I like the intent of it. It's trying to sort of solve some puzzles as you just are completely dumbfounded by what you're reading in Finnegan's Wake. This is trying to help, but I'm not sure how much it's helping. But anyway, I did read a bit more of that. I've been making really good progress in Aristotle Volume 2 with his History of the Animals treatise. I'm hoping to be done with that one maybe in a week and a half. We'll see. But so far, like the biological stuff that he's writing, it's a lot less dense than the sort of logic books and his book on metaphysics. But I can't say it's like terribly interesting, but it's more interesting than I thought it would be. As he talks about different animals, and he's talking about like how these different species copulate and things of that nature. And it's like, oh, yeah, I never thought about these things, before, but this is interesting. And he includes like humans with this too. And I think he's going to get into psychology a little bit, behavior, as he works through this. So anyway, it's good. It's going along. Great ideas today, 1970. I finally finished the very, very long article that was like an introduction to modern linguistics, which was super dry as the desert air, but very informative. If it's like better than you would get from an encyclopedia. Like you get much more substantial, so you could really get a good grounding, at least of the state of the art in 1970 in linguistics. And now I'm reading a long article about philosophy in here, sort of like the annual update of philosophy, and getting towards the end of that. And that's very briefly, like the two authors of that article are kind of looking at developments in analytic philosophy and also the phenomenology and existentialist branch of philosophy, which are sort of like these two big prongs in 20th century Western philosophy. He's looking at them through the lens of Immanuel Kant and his transcendental turn. And he's sort of seeing how these vastly different branches can be understood as sort of doing some of the same things. That's what I gathered from that article so far. The analytical philosophy stuff makes very little sense to me. It's something I haven't done a lot of reading in. And as you may know by now, if you've been following the channel, reading logic is not really my cup of tea, as it were. After that, there's going to be actually, I did finish the philosophy article. Now I'm reading this. I just started the New Rhetoric, A Theory of Practical Reasoning, which this is an article that's sort of updating a great idea. So rhetoric is one of the, 102 great ideas in the Great Books of the Western World set. So it's sort of looking at just how do we understand rhetoric these days. And that looks pretty readable. So I'm going to finish that one. And then as these volumes, they include what they call additions to the Great Books Library at the end. So as I work through these, and I've read all the 60s volumes, from where did they start? 61, 62, something like that, up to 7, now 1970. Those additions to the Great Books Library, I am not reading them. I'll get around to them another day. These are shorter works. I'm going to save those for another day. I'm more interested in the annual supplement articles. So I'll get through this 1970 pretty soon, possibly by the end of the year. And then read a little bit more in the Jorge Luis Borges collected fictions. I'm now in his collection I think it's called The Aleph. And I read the first story in that 1949 collection is called The Immortal, which I liked quite a bit. It was a bit of a longer short story. And now I'm up to a story called The Dead Man. So I want to keep going with this because every time I pick up Borges, I'm into it. He's very pleasurable to read. This is another book that I've been very actively reading, and that is Unto This Last and Other Writings by John Ruskin, Penguin Classics edition. I'm currently reading the centerpiece of this book, which is Unto This Last, which is essentially, I think, 4 essays, like a short book, and you get the whole thing in here. Everything else in this book is excerpted from other works of his. But I'm liking that. This is where Ruskin has made his turn from art criticism and architecture criticism to a critique of political economy. He has some very critical things to say about that. And so learning a lot from this, finding a lot that I resonate with in it as well. But maybe have more to say about this on another date. Okay. Now, as if that weren't enough, I can't help myself. I start adding other books. And some of these are books that I started a while ago, and I'm just kind of now like, oh, let's get back to it. This is one I don't think I've mentioned on the channel. The Poems of Sir Philip Sidney. And this is an ex-library book. I think it came out of the University of Delaware Library. I'm sure I found this. This goes way back when I went to Westchester University as an undergraduate. They would have these annual library book sales, and I'm pretty sure I got this from that. And I think that also included donations from faculty, and some of our faculty got their PhDs at University of Delaware, and which isn't too far away from here. And this is edited by William A. Ringler. And I thought, this has been on the shelf for literally decades. I'm 48 pages into it, and I'm reading it. Sidney was, he overlaps with Shakespeare. I think he's a little bit earlier, but he overlaps. And very famous as a sonneteer. I want to read his collection, Astrophel and Stella, which is maybe one of his more famous works of poetry. Currently, I'm reading a lot of stuff. They're called eclogues, poems from the Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia. So Arcadia is the theme here, and lots of imitations of ancient Greek and Roman poetry. And Sidney was quite the innovator in terms of meter. He experimented with things. He even played with quantitative verse, and good, solid, big name poet from the Elizabethan era. So I'm figure let's read this, and probably won't keep it, but this will clear some shelf space once I get through it, which could be a long time from now. But it's really not bad. And then this is another book that I haven't touched in probably close to a year, but it's been not far away, within arm's reach, and I decided to give it another go. One reason I've been a little bit leery is the length of it. It's almost 1,000 pages, and that is The Recognitions by William Gaddis. This is the Dalkey Archive edition, paperback. I believe this is now in Penguin Classics. I would like to swap this version for the Penguin Classics someday, but I bought this new, and it's just one of those white whale books that people talk about, but not a lot of people have read because it's so length and formidable. But, it's blurbed here by Cynthia Ozick on the back. The Recognitions is always spoken of as the most overlooked important work of the last several literary generations. Through the famous obscurity of the Recognitions, Mr. Gaddis has become famous for not being famous enough. And Jonathan Franzen called it the text of post-war fiction, and the first great cultural critique, which even if Heller and Pynchon hadn't read it while composing Catch-22 and V, managed to anticipate the spirit of both. The Recognitions is a masterwork about art and forgery, and the increasingly thin line between the counterfeit and the fake. Gaddis anticipates by almost half a century the crisis of reality that we currently face, where the real and the virtual are combining in alarming ways, and the sources of legitimacy and power are often obscure to us. I love that theme, which is why I want to get back to this. And honestly, I'm 100-some pages, 122 pages in. Nothing wrong with the book. I mean, when I do choose to read it, it holds my interest pretty well. It's just very formidably long, but I'm gonna give this a go in 2025. I think I can get through it, And I read a bunch of pages the other night and enjoyed it. So I think and it's amazing how much I remembered after being away from it for so long. But yeah, that's about all I want to say about that at the moment. And then a new one. So a new old book that I'm reading, and this is the first time through. Last winter, I read John Irving's most recent novel, what's it called, The Last Chairlift, and I liked it. And I thought I want to go back now and read one of his earlier novels, and that is The Cider House Rules. This one has also been on the shelf for decades. We have basically collected all his books, and I started it. I'm not very far into it yet, only 20 pages, but I'm starting to get on the hook already. It's about an orphanage in Maine, and I think abortion is going to be a theme in this book. And he's already developing characters and setting, and I think it's going to be like an entertaining read, as John Irving usually is. So why did I pick it up when I'm reading all these other books? Your guess is as good as mine. All right, now I want to move on to some channel updates and a little bit about TBRs. I'm thinking ahead to 2025 now. Some plans for the channel, some different things I want to do, maybe if I can get around to it. So I will be doing an annual roundup of the books that I've read this year. I always do a written piece. I've been posting that on my Medium page and also my Substack. So I'll write that first, and then I'll derive a short video from it. And I probably will not go through each book exhaustively, because that's part of what these reading updates are all about. But I will probably touch on my favorites, like best and worst kind of reads of 2024. But that's something I'll definitely bang out before the end of December. And then I'm thinking ahead to 2025, as I'm sure many of you are who are avid readers. So I do have some intentions, but I don't want to overdo the intentions, because I want to give myself some freedom. I'm enjoying being able to choose my path, follow my wanderlust. But there are definitely some things I want to do. So I'm going to be participating in the Proust. I don't know if it's a challenge, but it's Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads, I believe, launched this. And he's got a bunch of people who are going to be reading Proust in 2025, like trying to get through the whole damn thing in 1 year. I think I can do it, because this is a reread for me. I'm going to be reading the new translations and the Penguin Deluxe Classics paperback editions. I'm very excited to do that. And I've been chomping at the bit for months, but I'm trying to hold myself till January 1 to get back into it. I've calculated, and I think there's 7 volumes in Search of Lost Time by Proust. 7 novels essentially. I think if I read each book like a month and a half per book, it should get me through them all by the end of the year. And some I might read faster, because again, it's not the first time through. But yeah, I'm really excited to do that. I'm also going to be doing the Roman Emperor Challenge. I think that's Robert G. started that one. And I will be covering not all the Roman emperors, but the Roman emperors who are covered by Suetonius. I also, in the Great Books of the Western World, I do want to finish that volume 2 of Aristotle, and I think I can do that maybe by the spring. And then after that, I want to jump a little bit in those sets to... I can't remember if I've read Epictetus. So there's a volume that contains Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, who I have read. And I think Lucretius is in there. He's on the nature of things. Is that the work? Like sort of more of the Epicurean perspective. I have read that. So I think I'll just read Epictetus from that volume. I might even take a crack at Euclid's geometry, and just in a kind of like mental training type of way, almost like homework, like go through the theorems. I don't know how that's going to go. but like I'm trying to give some attention to those math and science volumes in that great book set. But I might even get ahead to Tacitus. I think there's a work by Tacitus in that set that I haven't read, which may also loop back to our discussion of the Roman emperors. We'll see. And then I might jump ahead into the Middle Ages and read St. Augustine. I have read Confessions, but City of God, I tried to read and I bailed out on it. I had a modern library edition of that, but City of God is in this Great Books of the Western World, so I might give that another try. Well, I will give it another try. I'm just not sure when. But I don't see why it can't happen this year. Okay. The great ideas today, I'm going to keep now going into the 1970s with those. So those will be fun to read. Also, my Educator Classic Library children's literature classics. I want to read more of those. So I've covered on this channel Treasure Island and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I think volume 3 of that is Pinocchio, which I've read before. I read that in a Magnum Easy Eye edition, but I want to do a walkthrough of that volume and do some show and tell. But I think after that, the next one might be Swiss Family Robinson. I'm not sure, but whatever the next one is, I'm gonna tackle it, and those will be fun. I'm just going to keep reading all this other stuff. I'll try to clear the decks as best I can. But also, I think, well, let me step back and talk to you about, like, sort of reading plans. Like, so long time ago, and this is back in the day when I organized my books chronologically when we lived in St. Louis. I decided I was going to read chronologically. Not everything. I break that rule all the time. I read plenty of newer stuff, but like just as an organizing principle, I'm going to like kind of march my way through the years, and not just for the great books of the Western world, but like anything, like Penguin Classics, anything I had, I'm going to kind of move forward. Well, I've been doing that sort of loose program for 20, 30 years, and now I'm into the 20th century, and I want to sort of pick up where I left off and read more 20th century, especially fiction. And so I have a few authors in mind that I want to read more of. And of course, I've read tons of 20th century fiction already, but like I'm filling in some holes here. One would be H.G. Wells. I want to read more of his novels, not just the science fiction stuff. I did read, what's it called, Tano Bungay. I read that one a couple years back. It was just okay. I wouldn't recommend it super highly, but he's got some other ones that intrigue me. I think one's called Kip that I'd like to read. Virginia Woolf, I have a very nice Folio Society edition of Orlando, so I'd like to get around to that soon. The most recent book I read by her was To the Lighthouse, and that was maybe a couple years ago. Boy, that was a great novel. I don't know if you can top that one, but for her. But Orlando should definitely be a lot of fun to read. And Faulkner, I have, and I want to show this on the channel someday. I have like a really nice favorite. Talk about favorite covers. Like this vintage paperback series that came out, I think in the 70s, 80s. I have almost a complete set of Faulkner in those covers. And I want to read a lot of the Faulkner novels I haven't read. No, the first up would be Absalom. So I want to get around to that maybe this year, in the next year. The William Gaddis I mentioned. Also, I have some NYRB classics that I'd like to dip into. A lot of those are 20th century, so good timing to kind of like, and these are some authors I'm much less familiar with, so that might be a lot of fun to explore them. And that's just scratching the surface. I want to read more Toni Morrison, so I have some shorter books by her, like Jazz and A Mercy, and I think one's called Love, and maybe Paradise. So I'm reading through that. Some of this is to like reduce shelf space. So for the Toni Morrison I just finished, I've been really trying to contemplate whether I want to hold on to that book or not, because I really did love it. But I always figure I can get that as an ebook or borrow it from the library if I want to come back to it. So think I'm going to like thin out my Toni Morrison, and there's other 20th century authors that I want to do the same thing to. One would be John Updike, who I have collected a whole bunch of his novels, and I'm not even like a huge John Updike fan, but I want to give some of these books a chance before I get rid of them. A couple that I read last year, I think, Couples and A Month of Sundays. I've already finished those and, gave them away. So that project has started. Philip Roth would be another one. Like, we still have a few of his books laying around and I want to thin him. So, it's always the battle to create some shelf space. If I found Toni Morrison in Library of America, and I don't know if she's in Library of America yet, I probably would like buy that to just kind of have those books in print again, but those would save a lot of shelf space. So anyway, that's kind of where that is. And then, yeah, I want to try some new things with the channel. One would be, and I hope people will weigh in the comments. And if you have interest in this, let me know. Or if you think things are a bad idea, let me know. Or if you have better ideas, let me know. But one would be to go back to a video I made many, many months ago about the Great Books of the Western World 10-year reading plan. And I think I'm getting to close to a critical mass of subscribers to the channel. And it's now time to maybe think about pursuing that 10-year reading plan. And those readings, if I recall, like they tend to be like pretty manageable. And I want to just kind of present them to readers. Some of these might be in the form of actual audiobook style readings, where if you just want to listen to a reading of these texts, you can do that. But then there will also be videos that are, you could call them read-alongs or deep dives or commentary videos, or just present the discussion questions that are offered in the 10-year reading plan, because there are a lot of good ones there. And just kind of march through that. That could just be sort of a running series on the channel. So I think 2025 might be the time to step into the waters with that one. I know the first text that I would cover would be the Apology by Plato about the trial of Socrates. And so stay tuned for that. I think that's something I'm going to try to do in 2025. I also want to do some more videos that are possibly a little more educational in nature, where they might be like, about literature, like about a particular book, like things that might be done in somewhat more of a lecture style, or, like provide some AV and just kind of like teach the text a little bit. So if people have an interest in that, let me know, because that scratches my teaching itch a little bit, and those might be fun to do. But all this is going to be like just whatever I stumble into and find interesting this month or this week could turn into something like that. So that might sound a little ambitious, but I actually personally don't think it's overly ambitious. And I'm really looking forward to reading in 2025 and having some of you spend some time with me as I swim through these books. Anyway, that's all I have for today. I hope your year in reading is ending up nicely. And as always, let me know what you've been dipping into lately. If you finished any books, if you have any questions or comments about the books I discussed here, let me know. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.